How do I plan for closing when buying properties in Brazil? Hello there, my name is Luciano Oliveira. I am a Brazilian attorney. So when you're planning for closing, the first thing you want to pay attention to is the timeline. As discussed in prior videos, you need to have enough timeline between signing the contract and the date of the closing. Ideally, you're going to have a target date for the closing, so everything may be worked towards this target date. One of the things that are going to happen in the meantime is, for instance, for the certificates of clearance and the main due diligence to be done in order for you to know that you may go ahead and pay the seller for the balance in order for the closing to occur. The target date is also important because you're going to be sending the funds, and if you're following our recommendations, you're going to be working with a currency exchange bank so you can time the release of the money with the day of the closing. Important to note, in Brazil there is no escrow, there is no title insurance, so you basically pay for the deal before you actually get the transfer deed signed. If you send the money directly to the seller's bank account, once you send the money, you don't have control on the release, and there is usually a time required for a compliance to be completed before the money is released into the seller's account. As a result, if you just send the money directly to the seller's bank account, there is going to be a gap in time between the day you send the money and the day that the seller actually receives the money. And only after the seller receives the money, the close is going to happen, because in Brazil, no seller is going to be willing to sign the transfer deed without the money in their bank account. So the idea is for you to reduce the timeline between sending the money and the date of the closing as much as possible, so there is as little risk as possible. In our experience, we always work with a currency exchange bank who's gonna do the paperwork review, the compliance checks up front, and only after this check is done, that's when we ask our clients to send the money through the currency exchange bank, and then we're gonna play by ear with the currency exchange bank towards releasing the money on the exact day of the closing. Another important check to be done in terms of planning for the closing is to make sure that the registry, the cartório in charge of the closing, they have all the documents that they require from both parties in order to allow the closing to happen. This is going to include the seller's documents. If the sellers are Brazilians, this is going to be pretty easy because the Brazilians always have the documents required. There is going to be a need for the certificates of clearance, which we have addressed in another prior video. And most importantly, you're going to need to have your own documents legalized for Brazil. As an example, if you're single, you need to present your birth certificate. And if you're from the US and you just present your US birth certificate, this document is not going to be accepted. Instead, you need to have this document apostilled and then sworn translated and then recorded in a different type of registry. All of those steps, they need to be completed, of course, prior to the closing. Otherwise, the closing is not going to happen. So this gotta be factored into your planning for the closing. In terms of documentation, our recommendation is that you, the realtor or your attorney, actually share with the cartório every single document up front, so the cartório has everything that they need in order to prepare for the closing. And if something is missing, then there is an opportunity for the registry, for the cartório, to let you know and give you an opportunity to fix what's missing. Important for you to note, if you're not going to be able to physically attend the closing, this should be handled early on in the transaction. It's pretty difficult for you to arrange a power of attorney with a couple of weeks before closing. So ideally, you're gonna do whatever you gotta do to physically attend the closing, or otherwise, if you're gonna need to attend to a power of attorney, make sure to get the power of attorney done while you're in Brazil. To do a power of attorney in Brazil, it's pretty easy. It's a piece of cake. It takes you less than an hour, less than $100, and it's done on the spot. You just just go to our registry and they prepare the power of attorney for you. Now, if you are abroad, it's a completely different story. It's a nightmare process with over 12 steps. You're going to spend a lot of money, you're going to spend time, and you're going to face a lot of headache because you're going to need to learn all those steps required for a power of attorney to be done abroad. There is also the e-notariado. The e-notariado is a new possibility for people to attend a closing remotely, but the e-notariado, just like the power of attorney, is pretty easy to get when you are in Brazil. So if you're watching this video now while you're still looking for a property, just remember, when you sign a contract, when you are in Brazil, make sure to get either a power of attorney or e-notariado done, because when you travel abroad, you can sign the purchase agreement remotely. That's not an issue. But for the closing, unless you have a power of attorney or e-notariado, you're gonna need to physically attend the closing in Brazil. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you share this video with your friends, and see you in our next videos.